Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. In this episode of Ignition Time, I'll show you an about face, if you will, from the former US Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, who initially criticized all of the spending plans from President Biden, but now says that he is in favor of the infrastructure package. I'll also give you some new behind the scenes information about what the Democrats considered and what they are now considering by way of taxes in order to be able to raise money to pay for all of this. Welcome to the Ignition Time channel, everyone. This channel, the Ignition Time channel, is about the country, the economy, as well as our money. Let's start with this headline from Bloomberg. Summers lauds Biden infrastructure plan after attacking stimulus. So what Larry Summers said was that in the past, he said stimulus was excessive. But as far as infrastructure and green energy is concerned, he said it is on the right track. It's very clear that Larry Summers is strongly endorsing the American Jobs Plan. This is exactly what he said. I'm particularly excited about the infrastructure program. I'm particularly excited about the green aspects. And he said it's what the country needs. This is all very much on the right track. Some other comments that Summers made that were very noteworthy. These are investments that are going to pay off in a growing economy and are going to, I think, generate significant tax revenues down the road that they have not taken any credit for. In other words, he says that there'll be even more revenue than the Biden administration is actually anticipating. He said very little of this money is going to be spent in the next several years, when I think overheating is a substantial risk. So I think this is very much in the right direction. So he's saying that the fact that this money is going to be spent over a long period of time is a good thing, because if all of this money was spent immediately, it could lead to overheating and inflation. So basically, he's saying that this is great after criticizing the spending plans earlier, because he now knows that the plan for the Biden administration is to spread out the spending over 8 years. By the way, this is super interesting. 8 years is 2 terms for the Biden administration. So that's an interesting side note there. And by the way, Summers is not concerned that increasing the corporate tax rate from 21 to 28% will damage private investment. He says, I don't think it's plausible to argue that this is going to damage investment. So he's saying, you know what? Companies will stay in America and do business in America, and they're not going to run for the hills like everybody, like a lot of the Republicans and a lot of the conservative commentators like Larry Kudlow are concerned about. Now, what's interesting is the president did essentially ignore certain aspects, certain proposals from within the Democratic Party that he felt were, dare I say, too progressive. Here's a headline of an article on your screen. Biden decides to shelve Warren's wealth tax. The president's Build Back Better initiative will rely on other ways to pay for the money instead of charging rich people a share of their wealth every year, which was originally proposed by Senator Elizabeth Warren. But it's very clear that Democrats in the United States Senate are staying busy. Here's an article on your screen from CNBC. Senate Democrats propose capital gains tax at death with a $1 million exemption. So many Senate Democrats are actually suggesting a plan that would essentially tax the unrealized capital gains of wealthy individuals at death. Currently, what happens is if a wealthy individual passes away, then those who inherit the money do not pay capital gains up to a certain limit. But what the Democrats want to do, specific Democrats in the Senate, they want to close that loophole, and they've introduced something called the STEP Act. So the STEP Act would get rid of the stepped up basis that wealthy individuals enjoy. And President Biden's infrastructure package essentially is going to need a lot of money to pay for it. And it looks like this STEP Act may be considered as we get closer to the passage of the American Jobs Plan. So here's something interesting. This plan aims to concentrate the tax amongst wealthy estates. It would let individuals exclude up to $1 million in unrealized capital gains from tax. So let's say someone inherits $6 million in stocks that were originally purchased for $4 million. The tax would apply to $1 million of the $2 million profit in this example. The United States is expected to lose approximately $42 billion in tax revenue this year from the exclusion of capital gains tax at death, according to the Joint Committee on Taxation, and it will cost about $218 billion from 2020 to 2024. In other words, the Democratic senators are trying to plug this loophole so that the US government can raise more money. Now, it's very clear, folks, that this is not going to get any support from the Republicans, but the Democrats are going to maybe try and get this approved by the president, maybe try and get the support of other Democrats, and try and pass it through budget reconciliation. Now, we talked about the STEP Act, but the way things are currently is that assets essentially are not subjected to tax for the first $11.2 million. So right now, individuals may be subject to a 40% federal estate tax for estates valued above $11.2 million. So under $11.2 million, essentially, that's the loophole that Democrats want to plug. They want to bring that down to $1 million in inherited estate that cannot be taxed as long as that $1 million was profit. And all of this brings us back to one important point, one main point. The president needs to be able to raise tax revenues somehow. Let's show you this article on your screen from Bloomberg. Biden aims to end corporate tax cuts, rewarding investors. So basically, what President Biden wants to do is increase corporate taxes, and this could have an impact on investors of those companies and potentially impact the stock market. So the buyback boom, which actually took place after the 2017 Trump tax cuts, is going to slow down. It is possible that the prices of stocks could be hit, and US firms could again become more attractive takeover targets as far as Bloomberg is concerned. And it's very clear that Republicans are not happy at all. Republican members of the House Ways and Means Committee said in a joint statement, in addition to giving the United States the highest combined corporate rate in the developed world, Biden wants to impose an uncompetitive minimum tax on American companies. You can see that they don't want tax to go up on corporations because the Republicans believe that corporations create jobs, create employment, which in turn helps the middle class. They don't want corporations to have to face high taxes because their belief is that that will trickle down and lead to a negative impact on the middle class. That could lead to less jobs, less wage increases, and that could lead to a whole bunch of other problems. Here's another comment from the Republicans. America is the only country that now sets a minimum tax on the foreign earnings of domestic companies. Now President Biden wants every country to impose such a tax in exchange for his promise to keep the US minimum tax rate higher than other countries. In other words, they are criticizing President Biden's ambitious global agenda in an effort to try and essentially tilt the scales, if you will, in favor of the middle class. And in the meantime, the director of the White House Economic Council, Brian Deese, said that the plans from President Biden would help stop a race to the bottom internationally on corporate taxes, because if different countries start reducing corporate income taxes, then essentially it is a race to the bottom. But if all countries can agree to a minimum tax, then that could actually make the playing field a little bit more competitive internationally. Pretty interesting and ambitious global agenda. The Brian Deese also argued that the overall infrastructure plan would prove beneficial to private sector companies. He said these public investments are among the highest return investments in terms of spurring private investments. This is what Brian Deese said to Bloomberg. One thing is for sure, they have to find a way, they meaning the Democracy administration, have to find a way to raise taxes somehow or get income from some other sources. Guess what? The majority of the revenue the US government gets comes from taxes. It comes from the taxes you pay. It comes from the taxes I pay. And therefore, I believe the US government simply has to raise taxes on the wealthy and on corporations. And there is no other way. There is no other way about it. They cannot raise taxes on middle income America because middle income America has been hammered. Specifically, individuals in travel, leisure, entertainment, and hospitality have been hammered as a result of this pandemic. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about this interesting about face in many ways from Larry Summers, who criticized spending but is now in favor of infrastructure. Let me know what you think of the plans from President Biden to raise corporate income taxes from 21% to 28% and increase taxes on those making more than $400,000 a year. Do you support this? Or do you not support it? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Folks, my name is Dr. Nitin Chhoda with Ignition Time. My goal is to present you with both sides of the story. For me, it's not about the red or the blue. It's about the red, white, and blue. I'm not Democrat. I'm not Republican. I'm American. We are all Americans first. It doesn't matter whether you support President Biden or whether you're a supporter of all the policies of former President Trump. What matters is that we are all Americans and we all want the country to progress. I believe we can all be united in our belief that help should go to those who need it the most. And yes, at some point in time, we all have to be responsible for ourselves. But the one thing the most vulnerable need is the right opportunity. They need respect, they need the right kind of mentorship, and they need the right opportunity. And hopefully the government, as dysfunctional as the government is, and when I say the government, I mean the US government. I don't mean President Biden's administration or former President Trump's administration. I mean the government. The government, as dysfunctional as it is trying to create a bold agenda to try and help those who've been left behind. Because individuals in travel, leisure, entertainment and hospitality have been left behind. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Please click the like button, please subscribe, please enable notifications. I would really appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching. Again, please click the like button, please subscribe. It does help out the YouTube algorithm. I appreciate you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.